Great. Welcome back, everyone. We back here on Educators Matter, um, where we believe that learning is the true new superpower. So today, very lucky to have a guest of mine. He's a brother, also a colleague, and I'll let him do an introduction.
All
The
right,
who,
good
the
people.
what, and the where.
Okay. How y'all doing, good people? My name is Maurice Foster. I'm an assistant principal here at a very high performing charter school in the great city of Newark, New Jersey. I've been in education for over 25 years. I worked as a learning specialist, special education teacher, public, private, and now charter. I've done self-contained, I've done inclusion, I've done enrichment programs. I have a plethora of experience, and so I've been in this game for a while. I'm not a novice, and I'm just happy to be here and share my philosophies on education with the great Kyle Newsom.
Appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you. So let's get into the question that everybody always wants to know: what got you into it? What keeps you in it? What sustains you? Why do you do the work that you do in education?
All right. Well, why do I do the work that I do in education? That's a very good segue, good story. Goes back to when I was younger, coming out of college. I did not go to college to be an educator. I got a business degree from Ramapo College in New Jersey. But one day I felt the need to see that students would get educated correctly. I was just seeing how teenagers were moving, how young adults were moving, the things that they were talking about, and I was like, "There's a gap in the education system, and it needs to be filled." And it's just this calling that wouldn't go away. It was in the back of my mind as I was out in corporate America trying to get my footing, and I decided to pivot and go the teacher route. I went the alternate route. Started working in a building in Newark, New Jersey, a private school, and sky's been the limit ever since. Like education, I think is a great equalizer. I think it presents a lot of opportunities and choices that people in other words, wouldn't have. Right? It levels the playing field, so to speak.
Awesome. Um, what is it about education that you love?
Man, I love that aha moment. Right? If you've ever been in a classroom in front of students and you see when they catch on to a concept or you see something that connects with them in their life and you see them get that spark. That's what it is for me. That's what it is, like that aha moment when a kid awakens, right? And so that's in the classroom. But outside the classroom, once you've done this work for some years and you go into the community and you see people who are now, they were once children, they're grown adults, and they could speak to what you did in the classroom and say, "Hey, I remember this lesson. I remember you taught us about this. I remember you said that, and this is why I changed my trajectory." It just gives you this feeling of satisfaction that really money can't buy. I mean, I'm not, don't get me wrong, money's important, but it can't beat that feeling of somebody saying, "Hey, you did something or said something that impacted my life for the greater good," and I just stay in it for that.
True indeed. True indeed. What would you say has been one of the biggest pain points for you in education?
Pain point. A pain point for me is when the system, right? Systems and structures created by people who are necessarily weren't on the front line and they don't understand what it is to be on the front line. And so they make decisions that are based on things other than what happens actually in the classroom and actually what a teacher would have to deal with on a day to day. And they just drive these mandates and they keep them kind of rigid and it kind of takes the creativity out of the classroom, out of the aspect of the teacher.
Indeed. So you mentioned you being an LS, a learner. So what's a learning specialist? For those who don't know what a learning specialist is.
Okay, so a learning specialist is somebody that's trained in special education, trained in the ways of delivering instruction and differentiation to students who have a learning disability or just may learn in a different manner. And so you're versed in all the different modalities of teaching, visual, kinesthetic, auditory, those things right there. You learn different techniques to give students access to the curriculum, how to scaffold information, how to differentiate instruction, how to modify program systems and curriculum to best fit the needs of the students that are in front of you.
Indeed. So let's dive into that a little bit because
Okay.
IEPs,
Yeah.
controversial. So you've been in that work. One, what's your thoughts on it? And just expand on
All right, so
individual education plan for those who don't know.
right, I was going to get at. So the
Yep,
IEP
yep.
does stand for the Individualized Education Program. It is federally mandated. It is law. And so what happens is if a child is suffering some delays or challenges or difficulties in school, the first thing that has to happen is they get an evaluation. They have a set of evaluations that are cognitive, educational. They could be with motor, sensory, speech, OT that has to do with your motor skills and things of that nature. And so you get a whole battery of evaluations to figure out if there is something happening with you cognitively or medically that's preventing you from learning. And then from there, the learning specialist, the child study team, which is made up of learning specialists, social workers, school psychologists, and behaviorists, if needed, will make up a plan designed for that particular student with accommodations and supports designed for the particular student to best give them access to the curriculum and so they can enable them to do their schoolwork in a way that's equitable to other students. So the IEP process is a lot of paperwork. It's law. There are guidelines that have to be done. There are procedures and protocols that have to be in place. And whatever you put in that IEP, since it is now law, it must be meted out by your teachers and staff.
Right. And so I know that a lot of the special education laws came into effect in the 70s as a result of kids not getting what they needed, and so legally protecting for those, especially those who were showing some cognitive disabilities, etc. What is the difference between an IEP and a 504?
All right, good question. A lot of people ask that question. What is an IEP and a 504? A 504 is basically for a medical condition. Like a student will have a medical condition that's somehow preventing them from learning in the classroom, right? And so you give accommodations for the 504. It could be things that like preferential seating, SECO, which is a check-in, check-out chart, just to keep students on task. They could have a medical aid if the situation is that bad. But a 504 puts accommodations in place. As IEP is specific to a learning disability, something is wrong in the processing area or something is not on average with the processing area in one area or multiple areas with a student. And so now they have an individualized plan that calls for more extensive instructional strategies, more explicit instructional strategies, and there's a range because in New Jersey we have 13 classifications, right? I can't go through all the classifications right now, but there are 13 classifications, and depending on that classification, that's how you determine what procedures, what scaffolds, what instructional strategies a student may need, how their day may look, how do you intervene behaviorally, do they need a BIP, things of that nature. Do they require paraprofessional services? A paraprofessional is someone who comes along to support students basically who are low with their executive functioning skill, or they have severe behavioral challenges that person can work them through.
Indeed. And what's a BIP for those who don't know?
A BIP, BIP, is a behavioral intervention plan, and those for students who exhibit challenging behaviors. And so you institute a BIP to get them to minimize those negative behaviors and reinforce positive behaviors with the hopes that after a while they no longer will have a BIP. They'll be able to acquire the skills needed to conduct themselves socially on par, and you remove the BIP and it's no longer a challenge.
Got it. Now let me ask you this. This is a highly debated topic around students being tested, overly medicated, improperly diagnosed, and then there's even a bigger discussion around students of color, boys, even more specifically. What's your thoughts and philosophies around all of it?
I got a lot of thoughts on that.
We got time. We got time. No rush.
Let me get comfortable. Let me tackle the medication, the diagnosis issue. I do believe that a lot of our students, specifically black males, are overdiagnosed for special education. I think that sometimes it's just a matter of them being in the right environment, teachers having good management skills and practices in the classroom, and just people taking that extra mile to go with the instruction. Because if students don't have a cognitive impairment, there really should be no reason for them to receive specialized services if you can't show through evaluations and medical testing that there is a learning disability present. So I think there's a high level of overdiagnosis, and sometimes it comes from lack of teacher training, lack of teachers being able to handle what we call high maintenance students and things of that nature. With medication, I used to be a person who was really against medication. I've actually seen doctors prescribe medication to students that they never tested. They just took the word of what the teacher was seeing in the classroom and what the parent was saying. They never took blood work. They never did these other things, and they just decided to up a dosage or prescribe a dosage, which I thought was criminal. But I was young in the game at the time, didn't know all the proper channels to go to. But that's not going to happen on my watch now. I know better.
What's the long-term effects of that?
Oh man, the long-term effects. One is addiction, right? That's a real thing. People become addicted to drugs, and so if somebody's used to taking this drug all the time and they become addicted, now you've got bigger issues, because when they graduate from school, when they get out of high school, they no longer getting these drugs. They need something else, and so now you go to the illicit drugs and things of that nature. And if you're giving somebody drugs and they really don't need them, then what are you doing to the body? Like, there's so many repercussions and side effects that are happening to the body. It stunts growth in a lot of people. It messes up their sleeping patterns, destroys their organs, things of that nature. With that said, though, I'm not 100% against it. I think if you have a thorough examination done by a reputable doctor and they go through all the steps, and it shows that the kid needs it, that they really can't function without it in school, then I've seen cases where medication has made a big difference. But like I said, I've also seen a lot of cases where I just believe students were overly medicated to the point where they couldn't even function. They're just zombies in the classroom, or the medication knocks them out and makes them completely sleepy, and you're getting no work done. Nothing. You also talked about the black males and their overdiagnosis. And again, I think that goes back to a lack of teacher training, a lack of cultural curriculum being in the schools, a lack of interest, and a lack of instructional strategies that are geared towards what black men and black boys need. And so when people get frustrated, they start to place labels, and then they go through a process. And if the parents aren't educated as well, or you're not an advocate for the parent yourself, a teacher in the school, they can be persuaded to consent to evaluations and have students diagnosed and put to special education classrooms that don't even need to be there.
Now, I know you've seen a number of IEPs in your day. I've seen a few as well. I've seen IEPs where there's 40 check boxes for accommodations. What are we doing? What's going on?
Oh my God. So if a kid needs 40 boxes of accommodations, do they really need to be in this school, right? And so what I think is people just go in again, I'm gonna say this is a lack of training, right? A lack of taking the time with a person that's new and walking them through the steps and knowing the kid and really observing and seeing what the kid wants. Sometimes they just generically put all these things in there that you see all the time. One of the practices that I do with my learning specialists and special education teachers is say, hey, if these are moves that teachers do regularly in the classroom, that's a baseline for all the teachers in the school, do not put that as an accommodation. It's not an accommodation. It's really called a teaching practice. It's a classroom management move. And so we try to pinpoint those things that are most high leverage for that particular kid, like preferential seating. Sometimes we don't even have to put that in the IEP, because when teachers sit down and talk and are designing their classrooms and are designing their rosters, we already talk about students who may need to sit closer to the board, who may need to sit closer to the door, who may need to be in an area where it's easy for teachers to come around and monitor and do these things. So you don't necessarily need to put that all the time. There are also accommodations in there. How can you track 40 accommodations in one classroom period? right? So a lot of these things aren't happening. People are not getting large print. They're not getting color coded paper. They're not. These things aren't happening because you've got way too many in there, and people can't don't have the capacity to put 40 things in place at one time. Your school might not even have the supplies that they put in there, and so we do a really good make sure we do a thorough job of just putting the accommodations that we know that this particular kid needs and that will leverage them to get the best results possible. But yeah, I've seen. I'm gonna just keep going about this IEP writing. I've seen some shoddy IEP writing. I've seen objectives that don't match up with the learn. I've seen people with copy and paste, and you're talking about a boy in the class is talking about this female because they copied and pasted from somewhere else. I've seen people with the wrong diagnosis. What else I've seen? I've seen a plethora of things, man. I've seen accommodations and modifications put in place for the wrong disability. You know, a person had OHI and they put in the accommodations for somebody with a communication impairment. So, you know, things like that, you have to be very thorough with those IEPs, and then that's how people get audited. They wind up in court. School districts lose a lot of money and people lose their licenses. But the real criminal side of that is students are not getting what they deserve.
Right. And what is HOI for those who don't know?
Oh, OHI. That's other handicap impaired. One of the most popular things that shows up under that is ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and it could be some number of medical issues. As long as that medical issue is a factor in impeding student learning, it could fall under OHI.
So now, how informed are parents? Because I mean, we talked about the law being in place
Right.
to protect students, which is therefore in place to support parents. But I mean, how informed are parents when it comes to the IEP process, knowing what the accommodations are? I know a lot of people try to reach out to advocates, but I mean, it can be pretty complicated, I'm sure.
Yeah, it can be pretty complicated. Anything that's dealing with like laws and things of that nature is going to have a certain level of legal jargon and technicality that most people might not be skilled with. People need to know this. Parents, you need to know this. You should be given a copy of the special education law book, either handed to you hard copy or sent to you digitally, so you can see all your laws, rights, and protections that you have under the IEP and go through the IEP process. I feel that parents are being better informed within the last 10 years, but before that, parents really were not that well informed about the IEP process and actually what it does and what type of education that their students are receiving. It even breaks my heart even now when I'm talking to parents who are coming new to our school, and I'm trying to gauge what it was like in their previous school or previous setting that they were coming from, and the parent has little information to give me and are not sure exactly what type of education and learning environment was taking place, or when a parent is surprised that their student doesn't have paraprofessional services, or the parent is surprised that their student is in a classroom setting that's an inclusion, and they're like, I thought my child would be in a class with only 6 people, but you're telling me they're in 30 people, or vice versa. Right. And so I think it's incumbent upon us as educators to be forthcoming with a lot of information, and knowing that parents aren't as technically skilled as we are. They don't deal with this every day. So in our IEP meetings, just to do a good job of giving an overview first of how it works and what the rights of parents are, right? Because we're all on the same side. And then there's also a level of responsibility on the parents to educate themselves and to make sure that they know exactly what's going on with their student. You don't want to be thinking that one thing is happening with your child and then it's a total another thing, and you're like, well, why is my child not growing? They're supposed to be getting all these services, and in actuality, they're not, because the IEP says something different. So parents, you need to thoroughly read through the IEP. Things that you don't understand, do not be afraid to ask questions in those IEP meetings, and stop us, right? Stop the case manager, stop the general ed teachers, stop the learning specialists, stop the evaluators. This is a good question. It reminded me of, we had a meeting last year, and one of the evaluators kept saying, oh, the kid did good. He did good, but the score was low. She said, oh, they scored low average. They scored low average. And I could see the parents' face like, why you keep saying they scored good if they scored low average? And I had to stop the evaluator and say, can you explain to her exactly what you mean by that? Because what you're saying to me in layman's term, if I didn't know, I would think my kid was doing well. So why do they need an IEP if you keep saying they're doing good? But what does that actually mean? They scored low average in this particular strand on this particular test. And so just taking time to explain to parents what is actually going on in the IEP, what the numbers mean, what the words mean, things of that nature. And parents, on the other hand, too, you have to be vigilant because this is your child. You can't get this time back. Like 1 year could ruin the kid for like 3 years. So you can't get this time back. You need to ask questions and not be intimidated.
True indeed. How often do you find as a leader in the work where there's this tension between compliance and what's best for a student?
It happens all the time. I mean, there's always a bit of friction there because compliance deals with this moolah, money, state aid from the government, right? And they set these hard deadlines and they set these rules in place in order around suspensions, number of suspensions, what you can do with a kid, how many days you got to do it, and things like that. And they set up a cookie cutter process, but sometimes it clashes with what a student needs, right? We're giving them an individual plan, educational plan, yet we got these hard, set, fast rules into place, and it can become some tension between meeting out what's best for the student and what on this piece of paper says, hey, they have to be in this space for 40 minutes a day, or they have to be in this space for 2 times a week, or you have to have this meeting on 20 days later, 30 days later. Like, I know that there has to be universal systems, but sometimes there are competing commitments and sometimes they're competing entities with what students need and what the law says or what compliance rules say that we have to abide by. And it's a slippery slope. And I think you just have to have open-minded people on your child study team and working with culture teams together to find the best ground for the school without trying to be out of compliance or breaking the law or something like that. But there many times there's some tension and there has to be some give and take. I wouldn't tell you it's an easy thing, and it's actually a case-by-case situation. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
For sure. Let's pivot a bit and talk a little bit about you being a black man in the work, right? A black man in education, a black man in leadership, black man in special education. Those are like 3 different levels. Obviously, we know that it's about 1% of educators, teachers all across the board that are black men. When you start talking about leadership and SPED, you're talking about fractions of a percent. Just tell a little bit about, like, one, your experience. I mean, you're definitely a unicorn. Just thoughts around that.
All right. Thoughts around that is, I take it as a badge of honor, right? I take it as a real privilege because we're not represented that much, but we are needed for some cultural aspects for our boys and our girls. Just being in leadership as a man in education, like you just alluded to, we're a small fraction, right? And one of the things that we get pegged with is they think every man should be like this Joe Clark figure, this disciplinarian. And I think what gets put to the wayside for black men in leadership is our intellectual capacity. Like, we have some real intellects out here, and we have some real innovative and creative thinkers, and that's what we bring to it. And I think a lot of times people are just looking for us to be the disciplinarian, the hard hammer, the Joe Clark rah guy, and don't give us credit for initiatives, our creativity, our compassion, our community involvement, and things of that nature, our acumen. And I think they think that we're ineffective in that realm, and they tend more towards either people of other persuasions or towards women if they want to move something academically. But I think black men are Renaissance. We can do it all, and we don't all have to be the same model that Joe Clark that they're looking for as far as leadership goes. That's one thing that I found out. Just being in education, I think there are a lot of stereotypes and misconceptions that have traditionally kept black men out of it. And I think there have been efforts taken within the last decade, 15 years, to try to bring more black men into it. It used to be seen as a woman's work and a woman's profession, but there is a lot of room for men to be men in the spaces and to inspire and encourage our students in a way that females can't. Not that we're better, just different. You know, we're bringing the yin and the yang to it. And so that's what I think. We need more representation in education and more pathways for black males to become teachers in the community, because, you know, that's what we are from the beginning. We're teachers. We're teachers at home in the house. We can also be teachers at home in the school. And as far as the special ed goes, seeing that a large component of the special education students are black males, it would behoove us to have more black males in front of them for things such as relatability, that Joe Clark box. Like, I think that's really the biggest hindrance to black males moving forward in education, is just the perception that we all have to be one way.
Indeed, you say a lot of things that resonate. What about the argument that there's not enough men or black men that are even moving into the field or pursuing the field?
So with that, I would need some numbers and statistics for that. But I know one of the things is pay, right? We know teachers on a professional level is one of the lowest paid professions, and people have families to take care of. And so that's something that has to be taken care of. The money needs to be upped in certain areas. The benefits need to be better, or things of that nature. So that is an obstacle for men to come into the profession, because they believe that they don't have enough money to take care of their families. It's not offering them enough on that stage. And also, we need more programs to show black men where they're needed and just about how much money they can make, and give them some incentives to be in there, right? One of the things that I think that's been encouraging to me is seeing that more black men are becoming paraprofessionals, and those are the ones who work with the special education students, and then they decide, hey, you know what? I can do this work. I can be a teacher, and it does take skill, right? Because men inherently want to be challenged, and men are, most of us are competitive by nature, and there's a competitive thing in education. People don't think so, but teachers compete against one another. We want to know that our skills are just as good, if not better, than the person down the hall from us. And so tapping into that competitive nature of saying, hey, this is a challenging career. This will force me to think. This will force me to be prepped. This will stretch my people skills, people capacity, and it will stretch my mind. Just showing men that, you know, it's just not you sitting there in a classroom and giving out worksheets and not getting nothing back. It's a very nuanced interaction between yourself and the community being these students, because you even get to know the parents in the community through the students and through the work that you're doing in the classroom, and it's very fulfilling. So I just think that more exposure, putting education in front of men more, upping the salaries. I'm big on upping the salaries, because people have to make a living. It has to be worthwhile. If I can make more money doing something else, I might go for it. But my community might need me more in that classroom than need me doing like driving a bus or being a sanitation worker or open up a business or something like that. So I think it's real nuanced, but I don't have the stats right in front of me right now, so I don't want to talk to it. But just from experience, like the money thing is something, and also just the stereotypes around teaching being women's work.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on student retention?
Woo. Woo, student retention. Man, first of all, I think that we got to do a better job of training and developing our teachers. We have to, right? I think if students were engaged, then we wouldn't be having this retention issue. I think it becomes a problem when students are like socially promoted. I think there needs to be a criteria, but I also do see a world in where, man, how can I send this kid 15, 16 years old to high school and he's reading on a third grade level, right? That just is like, man, I can't keep him in the elementary realm, but he's not ready for high school, right? And so we have to just figure out ways to fill in that gap right now. So retention on the whole, I'm for it. Maybe like once at the elementary school level, maybe one more time again in the high school level, if it's warranted. But we really have to come up with ways to engage our students and put retention not even on the table for a lot of them, man. It's just too much. Again, like I'm a big proponent on training and teachers being able to engage students and get the best out of them. I mean, if you have students who are out here able to navigate social media, navigate video games, navigate all this technology, I'm really not understanding why we can't get them to navigate the school system. And there were some inherent things and some one-off cases of what's happening at home and the family life and things of that nature. But on the whole, I think retention is not, it's not the ideal route. If I have to say that, it's not the ideal thing to do. You have some cases where it may be warranted, but if you're kind of going to retain somebody 2-3 times, you need to start thinking about a different way, a different method of teaching, a different program for this particular kid.
So do you believe in retention? I'll let you off the hook.
I believe in teacher development.
Here's a little switch up question. What's your thoughts on standardized testing?
On standardized testing. Who is it standardized for? Like, it's standardized, it's supposed to be universal. Are students universal? Are people's universal? All of that. The only thing that I think standardized testing is good for is actually to measure if a particular student has grown and shown growth. We do need growth measurement. We do need to see some metrics that say this student knows more this year than they did last year. They are performing on that level. I think when you start tying the high stakes to it, that's when it becomes an issue. I think there are some cases where we over-test and overemphasize, and we actually make kids and educators anxious about testing and the performance of the tests. And so I think it's just when you put that high stakes on it, it becomes something that it shouldn't be, right? We do need a performance metrics. We do need a measure, but I just think the standardized testing with the high stakes adds something, puts a level of pressure on there that is just not good for students or educators either.
Mm-hmm. True indeed. What's the responsibility percentage you would say of children being taught by parents versus by teachers?
You're saying who should own what percentage of that, if I'm hearing you correctly? I think it's 50-50. We need to come to school and educate students to the best of our ability, 100%, the way that we can. That's what parents are sending them for. We are the ones who are giving them those, what you call ABC skills, reading, writing, arithmetic, critical skills. Also at home, a parent, you need to be teaching your kid about culture, about how to interact with adults, about respect for the space, and then talking to them about the things that they're learning, right? I do know and acknowledge that there's a percentage of parents who probably their education level wasn't the highest, so it may be a challenge when the kids come home with homework of them actually helping them out. But I do think there's always the ability to talk to a student or about their day, to talk to your child about their day and say, hey, how was class? What did you learn about? What were you doing? Were you on pace? Did you get shouted out today? Did you get praised? Did you answer a question? Did you raise your, like, those things are all part of the education process. So I think you can either look at it as 50-50 or 100. We do 100% of our job that we're supposed to do, and parents, you also do 100% of your job that you're supposed to do. I know one thing, even me as a parent and an educator, at one point my daughter had some classes she was struggling in. I had to realize she was struggling, and I said, you know what? I need to get her a tutor. I couldn't do it myself because I didn't have the patience for her that I have for other students. That's a whole nother story. My wife used to go crazy, like, this is how you treat your students. I'm like, actually, no, I don't. Like, but I'm gonna get her a tutor because I can see I'm too hard on her, and then she can learn a little bit better. But there's an equal balance there between educators educating with skills and content and stuff like that, and parents educating on culture, social skills, and respect.
Would you say that there was a shift in your perception of educators prior to becoming a parent and becoming a parent? And if so, what changed?
Well, I was a parent a little bit early, so what it made me realize is that when I became a parent and I was a teacher at the same time, what it made me realize is that parents need some education too, and parents need some skills too about what to expect, what type of questions to ask students and things of that nature, what to ask their kids, how to advocate for their kids. They need the help too. I think me being an educator as my daughter was young and coming through school, I already knew some of the questions to ask teachers because I knew what was going on in the classroom, and other parents may not have that. Also, as a teacher, what I have seen is I believe younger teachers who do not have children of their own tend not to have the same level of compassion for students that others who do have children at home do have. I have seen that dynamic play out, and I have tried to talk to young people about that and young teachers about that and say, hey, that scenario you just did, I want you to run that through your mind from the perspective of the parent and see how you came off and how could you have gotten your point across a little bit better.
That was my follow-up question. What advice would you have for a teacher who does not have children?
Right. To be very compassionate, to always lead with questioning and assuming the best so you can get the most information from the parent. And listen, they can even ask their parent or people around them that they have children and run this scenario and say, hey, how did this land? Like, I said this to this kid, a parent got upset about this. This is what I said. How would that land to you as a parent? Like leveraging your school leaders about conversations before you have them, and even after you have them, to debrief to see, and then just asking for feedback all the time. Like, is my affect or my mindset towards children compassionate, caring, and respectful, or do I have some deficits and blind spots there that I need to work on?
For sure. Just thinking back from when you were a student, I know it's been a few years, wanted to know what you see that has changed from the time you were a student to now being an educator, and what has changed for the better and maybe not so much.
Well, I know one thing that has changed. I would say the students are more outspoken. Like, there were things in my generation where you went to school, you just were not challenging authority. It wasn't heard of. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing. There might have been some instances where we should have had the, autonomy to raise your hand and say, hey, what you just said right there, give me some more clarity on it. I don't understand that. There were some rules in place that were just rigid and strict, but you were expected to follow in tow. Another thing I think the rigor when I was a student, in some instances, from the ELA side, I'm put it like this. From the ELA side, I think the rigor was harder when I was a student, right? From the math side today, I think the rigor is harder. I think from ELA, the focus and emphasis on you being able to read, write, spell grammatically, and articulate yourself was way more on a higher bar than it is today. But in math, they are exposed to things way earlier than we were exposed to. These equations, fractions, the algebraic thinking at this level, I think it is harder, right? Some of these things that we're teaching in elementary school, I didn't see till high school. So I think that is harder. I think teachers are asked to do a bit more, in my perception. I don't know as a kid, but I think teachers are asked to do a bit more. And I think teachers are more trained nowadays, too, for the good
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. I think there's more training, but I think back in the day, the level of just the respect in the community aspect led to classes being more calm and more structured and more engaging. And just because you wouldn't try an adult like that,
Yeah.
you had more respect for authority. So I think that's missing. And in today's class, I see a lot of missed time on task from students because they're not showing that respect. And then that's where they're missing out on the
Yeah.
education.
Yeah, I have quite a extensive network of folks in education, and noticed that there's some elementary schools in different districts that are going back to phonics
Yeah.
or going back to even writing in cursive.
Yeah.
Huge subset of students who've come through who, when it was taken out of education, they don't even know how to sign their names, and so there are some things that are coming back around that I've noticed.
Yeah, and we've also missed the connection. You talked about cursive handwriting. It also builds memory, and people don't know that that's one of the things. Like when you're writing in cursive, it helps you to build memory and create some synapses in your brain. So there's a connection there. So, but remember, we're moving away from paper and pencil writing. Everything's on the laptop and the tablet, things like that. So we've got to find a better way to make it as rigorous as it was back then, but with this technological piece. And so we're still trying to catch up as educators to this new brain, this new way of thinking, and how fast students are. We still got to get the tools to adapt to that. So
Yeah, I was talking to a second grade teacher, and it was saying how there are so many things that have transitioned to the technological side, but in some instances, you still got to sign your name.
yeah, you do.
And that has not, like, there's still some ways where you do it electronically, but for the most part, there's a huge part of life and adulting, if you will,
Yes.
where your signature is still relevant. And
It is. I had to teach my daughters and my nieces and my nephews that because I was like, man, you don't want nobody stealing your property when you get older, right? You don't want nobody saying that they own this house and it's supposed to be yours. So
You still, yeah, you when you close on your mortgage, you still got to sign 40,000 papers.
that's right.
True indeed, true indeed. So I'll get you out of here. A couple more questions quickly.
No problem.
What is one thing, if you could change in education, that you would change?
What is one thing in education that would change? If I could change one thing, what gets under my skin? What
Or
thing?
if you could build the school that you wanted to build, what would you have in it that just doesn't exist right
Oh my God, I would build
now?
an hour.
Let's dream for a minute.
Yeah, let's dream. Let's dream. I don't know. I don't know if you was back when we had home economics and shop and skills like that. I just think there would be a lot more movement involved in my school. There would be a lot more arts involved in the school. Things that kids enjoy, things that tap different parts of the brain, and things that kids could do to further themselves in society, right? I look at other cultures, right? I saw something one time they had these Japanese kids and they were in school, but they were all like learning how to sweep, mop, organize, do all this stuff early on. I'm like, they got a whole like hour class period just about home economics and keeping the home up and having things tidy and things like that. And not only was it helping them with them skills, but they had to do it as a team. So it was building teamwork. So I would go to, my school would be centered all around like respect and collaboration and community and building culture and teaching aspects of culture all the way through it, embedded in the curriculum. One thing, now you're getting in my wheelhouse now. Another thing that I would have, like, specifically for African people, because we have been at a deficit in this country, the curriculum needs to be based in our experiences, right? I love Anne Frank. I love the Diary of Anne Frank and the Jewish Holocaust, and I think kids should read about that. But I'm kind of shocked about the books that we're choosing to put in front of our students that don't reflect their experience. And I think they would be more engaged if they had more books that reflected their experience. There are authors out there because basically we're teaching skills from these books, right? And I believe that there's books on the Black experience that you could teach these same critical thinking skills, these same analytical skills out of those books with that experience that will also hit them internally and make a connection with kids, and they'd be more engaged in the work. So I would have a culturally relevant curriculum geared toward the geographic students in my neighborhood, and I will also have a school that had a lot of collaboration, a lot of community circles, a lot of teamwork, because ultimately when we become adults, we have to work with other people in this world.
Not to put you on the spot, is there
Yeah.
any book recommendations that you would recommend
Let me
at
see.
any grade level?
At any grade level, well, Black Boy by Richard Wright is always one that I love, right? The Hate You Give is something that's more contemporary that people that students should read. So books like that.
Yeah, for sure. What's your trajectory? What's your plan? 1 year, 5 years out, where you see yourself in education?
Well, since I'm new to this administration role here, being the assistant principal of special education, I'm gonna take a couple of years to just try to hone this craft, get this craft down. The next step for me would be the director of special education, and then I would do probably about 5, 6, 7 years there. I'll bow out, do some consulting and things like that. But probably for the next five years, my trajectory is to be the director of special education on a regional level, so that I can help the whole district be unified, equitable, and get those positive outcomes for the students who are historically challenged.
For sure, for sure. I'll get you out here on this one here. So, if you had to give a message to educators watching this right now, what would your message be? What do you want educators to know and to take away from you?
Educators, I want you to know that you matter. I want you to know that your work is not in vain. I want you to know that all the blood, sweat, tears, late hours you pour in to make your classroom effective, joyful, and a place of community is not wasted. You are getting your message across. Don't give up. Our students need you, because if you're not going to do it, who will? You are valuable, you are important, and you are definitely needed. Don't give up.
Appreciate you, bro. Thank you for your time. We're gonna have you back on soon.
All right, thank you.
All right, peace.